Marcus Blackwood stood frozen in the doorway, his $3,000 Italian suit wrinkled from another 18-hour day, watching something that shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. There, in the middle of his daughter's medical equipment-filled room, was Sofia Rivera, the new nanny he'd hired just 3 weeks ago, spinning slowly with 8-year-old Emma in her wheelchair, both of them laughing like music had returned, to a house that had been silent for 2 years. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about unexpected connections that change everything, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. Marcus had been rushing to Emma's room to say goodnight before another business trip to Tokyo. The same routine that had defined their relationship since the accident that stole his wife and left Emma paralyzed from the waist down. But nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Sophia had somehow moved all the medical equipment to the sides of the room, creating a clear space in the center. Soft classical music played from her phone, and she was guiding Emma's wheelchair in gentle circles, the little girl's face radiating pure joy for the first time since the crash. Emma's laughter pierced through Marcus like a lightning bolt. He hadn't heard that sound in over 2 years, not since before the night that destroyed everything. The night when his wife Claire had been driving to pick up Emma from her dance recital, the night when a drunk driver ran a red light and changed their lives forever. Claire died instantly. Emma survived but would never walk again. And Marcus had buried himself so deep in work and guilt that he'd forgotten his daughter was still very much alive. "Daddy!" Emma's voice broke through his paralysis. "Look, Miss Sophia taught me how to dance again. I'm flying." Sophia immediately stopped, her olive skin flushing with embarrassment as she turned to face Marcus. At 26, she possessed a natural grace that seemed to light up any room she entered. Her dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and her warm brown eyes held a mixture of determination and vulnerability that had somehow bypassed every defense mechanism Marcus employed when hiring staff for Emma. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry," Sophia began, her slight Spanish accent making her words sound like a melody. "I know this isn't part of my job description. I just thought—" "Don't apologize," Marcus said quietly, surprising himself. He stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. His daughter looked more alive than she had since the accident. Her cheeks were flushed pink with excitement, her eyes sparkling with the kind of happiness he thought was lost forever. "Emma, you look beautiful." The truth was, Marcus had been so consumed with making sure Emma had the best medical care, the finest tutors, the most advanced equipment, that he'd forgotten she was still a little girl who needed joy, not just treatment. Every nanny before Sophia had been professionally qualified but clinical, treating Emma like a medical case rather than a child. They followed protocols, administered medications, and maintained schedules with military precision. But none of them had ever made Emma laugh. "Miss Sophia says dancing isn't about your legs," Emma explained, her voice bubbling with excitement. "It's about your heart and your spirit. She says I can fly without ever leaving my chair." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. For 2 years, he'd seen Emma's wheelchair as a symbol of everything they'd lost. But watching Sophia spin her daughter through the improvised dance floor, he realized he'd been the one who was truly paralyzed. He'd been so afraid of facing his own grief and guilt that he'd built walls between himself and the most important person in his world. Sophia watched the interaction between father and daughter with careful attention. During her 3 weeks in the Blackwood mansion, she'd noticed how Marcus avoided spending time with Emma beyond the necessary check-ins. He provided everything money could buy, but withheld the one thing Emma needed most, her father's emotional presence. Sophia had worked with many wealthy families in her 5 years as a specialized caregiver, but she'd never encountered a father so obviously drowning in his own guilt. "Mr. Blackwood," Sophia said softly, "would you like to join us?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus looked at the makeshift dance floor, at his daughter's hopeful expression, at Sophia's outstretched hand. Every instinct told him to retreat to his office, to the safety of spreadsheets and conference calls where emotions couldn't ambush him, but Emma's eyes held a plea he couldn't ignore. "I don't dance," he said, but he didn't move toward the door. "You don't have to know how," Sophia replied gently. "Emma can teach. She's an excellent teacher." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "It's easy, Daddy. You just have to feel the music." Marcus loosened his tie, a gesture that felt symbolic of something larger he couldn't quite name. Slowly, he approached his daughter's wheelchair. When was the last time he'd really looked at her? Really seen her? She had Claire's green eyes and stubborn chin, but there was something uniquely Emma in the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite everything she'd endured. "What do I do?" he asked, feeling awkward and exposed in a way that board meetings and billion-dollar negotiations never made him feel. Sophia positioned herself on one side of Emma's wheelchair while guiding Marcus to the other. Just hold her hand and follow my lead. Let the music guide you. As they began to move together, Marcus felt the weight of 2 years of accumulated grief and guilt pressing against his chest. He'd thrown himself into work after the accident, expanding his tech empire globally because building companies felt safer than rebuilding the connection with his daughter. Success was measurable, controllable. Love was messy and terrifying and could be taken away in an instant. But as they moved in their small circle, Emma chattering happily about the steps Sophia had taught her, Marcus began to understand what he'd been missing. This wasn't about dancing, it was about presence. It was about showing up for the life they still had instead of mourning the life they'd lost. Miss Sophia used to be a dancer, Emma announced proudly. She performed all over the world before she became a nanny. Marcus looked at Sophia with new interest. He'd hired her based on her impressive credentials in pediatric care and childhood development, but he'd never asked about her background beyond her professional qualifications. You were a professional dancer? Sophia's smile became wistful. I was a principal dancer with the Madrid Ballet Company for 8 years. I performed in Paris, London, New York. But I injured my knee in a fall during Swan Lake 3 years ago. The doctor said I'd never dance professionally again. So you became a nanny? Marcus asked, trying to understand the transition. I became a caregiver because I learned that healing isn't just physical, Sophia explained, her hand still guiding Emma's wheelchair in gentle movements. When I lost my ability to dance, I thought my life was over. I fell into depression, pushed everyone away, convinced myself that if I couldn't be who I used to be, I couldn't be anyone at all. Marcus felt an uncomfortable recognition in her words. Wasn't that exactly what he'd done? Convinced himself that if he couldn't be the husband and father he'd been before the accident, he couldn't risk being anything at all. What changed? He asked quietly. I met a little boy named Diego in physical therapy, Sophia continued, her voice soft with memory. He was 7 years old, paralyzed in a swimming accident, but he had this incredible spirit, this joy that couldn't be broken. He taught me that dancing isn't about perfect technique or physical ability. It's about expressing the music in your soul. After that, I knew I wanted to work with children who needed to remember how to find joy again. Emma had stopped chattering and was listening intently to Sophia's story. Is that why you came to help me? Because I forgot how to find joy? Sophia knelt beside Emma's wheelchair, taking the little girl's hands in hers. I came to help you. Remember that joy never really leaves us. Sometimes it just gets buried under sadness and fear. But it's always there, waiting for us to dig it up again. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion he'd been suppressing for 2 years. Emma, he began, then stopped. What could he say? That he was sorry for becoming a stranger in his own daughter's life? That he'd been so terrified of losing her too that he'd already lost her in every way that mattered. It's okay, Daddy, Emma said with the wisdom that only children seem to possess naturally. Miss Sophia told me that sometimes grown-ups get scared when something bad happens. She said you weren't staying away because you didn't love me. You were staying away because you loved me so much it hurt. Marcus looked at Sophia, who was watching him with understanding eyes. You said that? Children need to understand that love doesn't disappear just because people act differently, Sophia replied. Emma needed to know that your distance wasn't about her. It was about your own pain. The music continued to play softly as the Amiibai. 3 of them stood in their small circle, Emma's wheelchair forming the center of their impromptu family moment. Marcus realized that this was the first time in 2 years that he'd felt truly present in his daughter's life. Not checking his phone, not thinking about the next meeting, not running through mental to-do lists. Just here, in this moment, with his daughter and this remarkable woman who'd somehow known exactly what they both needed. I've been a terrible father, Marcus said quietly, the admission feeling like stepping off a cliff. No, Emma said firmly. You've been a scared father. There's a difference. Sophia squeezed his hand. Fear makes us do things we never thought we'd do. But courage means doing the right thing despite the fear. Marcus looked down at his daughter, really looked at her. She'd grown so much in the past 2 years, not just physically, but emotionally. She'd endured surgeries, countless hours of physical therapy, learning to navigate a world designed for walking, and she'd done it all while her father hid behind his laptop screen, convincing himself that providing for her financially was enough. Emma, will you forgive me? He asked, his voice breaking slightly. There's nothing to forgive, Daddy, Emma replied, reaching up to touch his face. But will you promise to dance with me more often? Marcus laughed, the sound rusty from disuse, but genuine. I promise, though I'm probably going to need a lot of practice. Miss Sophia can teach you, Emma suggested brightly. She's the best teacher in the whole world. Over the following weeks, something fundamental shifted in the Blackwood household. Marcus rearranged his schedule to be home for dinner every night. he learned Emma's physical therapy routine and started participating instead of just observing from the doorway. Most importantly, he began to see his daughter not as a broken version of who she used to be, but as a complete person who happened to use a wheelchair. Sophia became more than an employee. She became a bridge between father and daughter, gently guiding Marcus back into Emma's world while helping Emma understand her father's complex grief. She had an intuitive understanding of family dynamics, perhaps because she'd grown up in a large, chaotic, loving family in Valencia, where everyone talked over each other and emotions were expressed freely rather than suppressed. The evening dance sessions became a regular tradition. Marcus would come home from work, change out of his suit, and join Emma and Sophia in what had become known as the dance room. They moved Emma's bed to a different room and converted her original bedroom into a proper dance space, complete with mirrors, a sound system, and enough open floor space for wheelchairs to move freely. But it was more than just dancing. These sessions became a time for talking, for sharing the details of their days, for rebuilding the connection that had been severed by trauma and fear. Emma would tell them about her tutoring sessions, her video calls with friends, her latest art projects. Marcus began sharing stories about his work, but also about his childhood, about meeting Emma's mother, about dreams he'd forgotten he had. Sophia watched their relationship heal with professional satisfaction, but also personal joy. She'd worked with many families, but never one where her impact felt so transformational. Usually her job was to provide care and companionship while parents maintained their existing routines. With the Blackwoods, she felt like she was helping to rebuild something that had been shattered. One evening, about 6 weeks after the first dance session, Marcus found himself alone with Sophia while Emma was having her evening bath with the help of the night nurse. They were cleaning up the dance room, putting away the props Emma had insisted they use during that night's performance. "Sophia," Marcus said, setting down a silk scarf Emma had used as a ribbon in their impromptu ballet. "I need to thank you." "You don't need to thank me for doing my job," Sophia replied, but her smile suggested she appreciated the gesture. "This goes beyond your job," Marcus said seriously. "You gave me my daughter back. More than that, you helped me remember how to be her father." Sophia paused in her cleaning, considering her words carefully. "You never stopped being her father, Marcus. You just forgot how to show it." The use of his first name felt significant. Over the weeks, their relationship had evolved from strictly professional to something warmer, though neither had acknowledged it directly. There were moments of connection during their evening sessions, times when their hands would brush as they guided Emma's wheelchair, or when they'd catch each other's eyes during one of Emma's particularly joyful outbursts and share a smile of mutual understanding. "Can I ask you something personal?" Marcus said, settling onto one of the cushions they used for floor work. Sophia nodded, sitting cross-legged across from him with the natural grace that never quite left her movements. "Do you miss it? Professional dancing?" Sophia was quiet. For a long moment, her fingers absently braiding the ends of the silk scarf. "I miss parts of it," she said finally. "I miss the feeling of losing myself completely in movement, of becoming something larger than my individual self. I miss the applause, the sense of accomplishment after a perfect performance." But, Marcus sensed there was more. "But I've learned that there are different kinds of dancing," Sophia continued. "When I watch Emma's face light up during our sessions, when I see her discover new ways to express herself, when I watch you rediscover your connection with her, that's a different kind of performance. Less visible, maybe, but just as meaningful." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude for her work with Emma, and everything to do with his growing admiration for who Sophia was as a person. She possessed a rare combination of strength and gentleness, of professional competence and emotional intelligence. More than that, she'd integrated into their family with such natural ease that he sometimes forgot she hadn't always been part of their lives. "Emma adores you," he said quietly. "I adore her, too," Sophia replied. "She's taught me as much as I've taught her. Maybe more." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken feelings settling between them. Marcus knew he was walking into dangerous territory. Sophia was his employee, living in his house, caring for his daughter. Any romantic feelings he might be developing were inappropriate on multiple levels, but watching her with Emma, seeing the joy she'd brought back into their lives, witnessing her own journey from brokenness to healing, he couldn't deny that his feelings had evolved far beyond professional appreciation. "Marcus," Sophia said, softly, and the way she said his name made his heart skip. "I need to tell you something." He looked up, noting the serious expression on her face. "I've been offered another position," she continued. "A family in Switzerland with twin boys who have cerebral palsy. It's a good opportunity, and the pay is substantial." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Are you considering it?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "When I first took this job. I planned to stay for 6 months, maybe a year. Help Emma through her adjustment period and then move on to the next family. That's how I've always worked. What's different now? Marcus asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Sophia met his eyes directly. Everything is different now. Emma is different. You're different. I'm different. And when I came here, you were all just another job, another challenge to solve. But somewhere along the way, this stopped feeling like work and started feeling like... Like what? Like home, she whispered. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Marcus wanted to tell her that he felt the same way, that the thought of her leaving felt like losing his family all over again. But he also knew that his feelings put her in an impossible position. If she stayed because of their growing connection, was she staying for the right reasons? If she left despite their connection, would she be running from something that could be beautiful? Before either could say more, Emma's voice called from down the hallway. "Miss Sophia, I need help with my hair." The moment broke, and Sophia rose gracefully to her feet. "I should go help her." "Sophia," Marcus called as she reached the doorway, "whatever you decide about Switzerland, I want you to know that you've changed our lives. Emma's and mine. Nothing will ever change that." She turned back to look at him, her expression soft but unreadable. "You've changed my life too, Marcus. Both of you." Over the next few days, the awareness of Sophia's potential departure hung over the household like a storm cloud. Emma sensed that something was wrong, though she didn't know what. She became clingy with Sophia, requesting extra dance sessions and asking repeatedly if Sophia was happy working with them. Marcus found himself paying closer attention to every interaction, every smile, every moment of connection, as if he could memorize them against future loss. He watched Sophia teach Emma new dance moves, her patience infinite even when Emma struggled with coordination. He observed her reading bedtime stories with different voices for each character, making Emma giggle with her dramatic interpretations. He noticed how she remembered every detail of Emma's preferences, from her favorite songs to her preferred order for completing physical therapy exercises. Most of all, he noticed how natural it felt to have her in their home, as if she'd always been there. Emma had started referring to their evening sessions as family dance time, and Marcus realized that's exactly what they'd become. A family. Not the family he'd planned, not the family he'd lost, but a new kind of family that had grown organically, around shared healing and rediscovered joy. 3 days after Sophia's announcement, Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. Instead of going directly to his office after breakfast, he asked Sophia to join him in his study while Emma worked with her morning tutor. "I have something to ask you," he said, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "And I want you to know that there's no pressure attached to this question. Your job here is secure, regardless of your answer." Sophia settled into the chair, her expression curious but cautious. "I'm in love with you," Marcus said simply, deciding that directness was the only approach that made sense. "I know that complicates everything. I know it puts you in a difficult position, but I needed you to know before you make your decision about Switzerland." Sophia's eyes widened, but she didn't look surprised, so much as relieved. "Marcus, let me finish," he continued. "I'm not asking you to stay because I have feelings for you. I'm asking you to stay because you belong here, with us. Emma needs you, yes, but more than that, we've become a family. The three of us together. We work. We heal each other. We make each other better." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her hands folded in her lap. "I'm in love with you too," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have been for weeks, but I was afraid to admit it because I didn't want you to think I was taking advantage of our situation." Marcus felt relief flood through him like warm water. "So what do we do now?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "I've never been in a situation like this. In my previous positions, maintaining professional boundaries was never difficult, but with you and Emma, you became family instead of an employee," Marcus finished. "Yes. And family doesn't leave when things get complicated." Marcus stood and moved around his desk, kneeling beside her chair. "Then stay. Not as Emma's nanny, though you can keep doing that if you want to. Stay as yourself, as part of our family. Let's see what we can build together." Sophia reached out to touch his face, her thumb tracing along his cheekbone. "Are you sure? Really building a life together means dealing with all the messy, complicated parts. It means Emma potentially seeing us as a couple, not just her father and her caregiver. It means changing the entire dynamic of what we've created." "Emma already sees us as a family," Marcus pointed out. "She's been asking me for weeks when you're going to officially become her new mom." Sophia laughed, tears gathering in her eyes. "She is not. She has. Last week she asked if she should start calling you Mom Sophia or Sophia Mom. I told her she should ask you when she was ready." "And what did she say?" She said she was waiting for me to stop being scared and ask you to stay forever. Sophia shook her head in amazement. That little girl is too wise for her own good. So? Marcus asked, taking her hands in his. Will you stay forever? Instead of answering with words, Sophia leaned forward and kissed him softly. A kiss that felt like coming home and starting an adventure at the same time. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I'll stay, she whispered. I'll stay and we'll figure out how to be a family together. From the hallway came the sound of Emma's wheelchair, followed by her voice calling out, Are you guys done being mushy yet? Because I have some ideas about how we should tell everyone we're a real family now. Marcus and Sophia looked at each other and burst into laughter. How long has she been listening? Sophia asked. Probably since the moment we started talking, Marcus replied. She's inherited her mother's talent for strategic eavesdropping. Emma appeared in the doorway, grinning triumphantly. I knew it. I told my tutor that you two were going to fall in love because you look at each other the way Daddy used to look at Mommy in the photos. Marcus felt his heart squeeze, but instead of pain, there was only gratitude. Gratitude that Emma remembered Claire with love instead of just sadness. Gratitude that she was wise enough to recognize that loving Sophia didn't diminish their love for Claire. Gratitude that his daughter had taught him it was possible to build something beautiful from the pieces of something broken. Come here, he said, opening his arms to Emma. She wheeled over quickly, and he lifted her from her chair. Into his lap, Sophia's hand naturally finding its place on Emma's back. So, we're really going to be a family? Emma asked, looking between them with excitement. We already are a family, Sophia said gently. We have been for weeks. Now we're just making it official. Good, Emma said decisively, because I already picked out my dress for the wedding. Marcus and Sophia looked at each other over Emma's head, sharing a moment of amused understanding. They had a lot to figure out, a lot of conversations to have, a lot of adjustments to make, but they also had something precious and rare, a second chance at happiness built on a foundation of healing, honesty, and hope. That evening, they held their first dance session as an officially acknowledged family. Emma insisted on teaching them a new routine she'd choreographed herself, one that involved all three of them moving together in harmony. As they danced, Marcus realized that Sophia had been right that first night. Dancing really wasn't about your legs. It was about your heart, your spirit, your willingness to trust in the music and let it carry you somewhere beautiful. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the garden of their home, watching Sophia and Emma practice a special dance they'd prepared for the wedding reception. The Swiss position had been filled by someone else, and Sophia had officially transitioned from employee to family member, though she continued to work with Emma on her physical therapy and emotional development. They'd faced challenges, of course. Merging their lives had required patience, compromise, and countless conversations about boundaries, expectations, and dreams. Emma had needed time to process what it meant to have a new mother figure, especially one who would never replace Claire but could love her just as fiercely in a different way. But they'd worked through each challenge together with the same patience and grace that had characterized their healing journey from the beginning. They'd learned that love wasn't about replacing what was lost, but about growing something new from what remained. As Marcus watched his daughter spin in her wheelchair, while Sophia moved beside her with fluid grace, he thought about the night that had started it all. The night he'd stood frozen in a doorway, watching two people he loved find joy together. He'd been afraid that night, terrified of feeling too much, of risking too much, of hoping too much. Now he understood that love always required risk. It required the courage to show up completely, to be vulnerable, to trust that the people who mattered would catch you when you fell. It required the faith that healing was possible, that joy could return, that families could be rebuilt in ways more beautiful than anything you'd originally imagined. The music reached its crescendo, and Emma threw her arms up in triumph as she completed the final spin. Sophia applauded enthusiastically, then caught Marcus's eye across the garden. The look they shared was full of promise, gratitude, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you found your place in the world. Tomorrow, they would be married in this same garden, surrounded by friends and family who had watched their unconventional love story unfold. But tonight, they were simply a father, a daughter, and a woman who had learned to dance together, creating something beautiful from the pieces of their individual brokenness. Marcus walked over to join them, and Emma immediately demanded that he participate in an encore performance. As they began to move together, he realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of loss or pain, but the presence of love that was strong enough to transform everything it touched. The music played and they danced, and for the first time in years, Marcus Blackwood was exactly where he belonged.